Welcome back everyone to the videos on goods and services tax. In today's video, we will discuss about the time of supply of services in general and certain special provisions regarding time of supply of service. So time of supply of service is determined more or less similar to that of time of supply of goods. Okay, so I think it will be easy for us to understand the determination of TOS of service. So, in case of time of supply of service, the general rule is based on the idea whether the invoice is issued within a period prescribed. So, if the invoice is issued within the period prescribed, the provision will be 1. And if the invoice is not issued within the period prescribed, we will have another provision. So, TOS shall be the earliest of the following dates. The first one is the first point A is applicable when the invoice is issued within the period prescribed. So what is the period prescribed that we will discuss in the next slide to come. Okay, so the first point A is applicable, that this provision is applicable when the invoice is issued within the prescribed time. So what will be the time of supply? It will be the date of issue of invoice by the supplier or the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. So when we talk about the date of receipt of payment, we should consider main two things. There are two things to remember in case when we consider the date of receipt of payment, of which we will discuss in the next slide. So that is the first condition. If the invoice is issued within the period prescribed, the time of supply can be determined as in point A. Then, if the invoice is not issued within the prescribed time period, what will be the determination of TOS? In that case, the TOS will be determined either on the date of provision of service. So, provision of service means supply of service. Okay. Either on the date of provision of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. So that will be the provision when invoice is not issued within the period prescribed. Okay. So if the provisions in point A and the provisions in point B do not apply, that means in other cases, what will be the determination? The determination will be the date on which the recipient shows the receipt of services in his books of account. So, I am a receiver of any service. I received some kind of service from a particular supplier. Okay. So, whenever this receipt of service is shown in my books of account, so that date will be considered as the time of supply of service there. Okay, so we have two provisions and it is based on whether the invoice is issued within the prescribed time period or not. And if both of these clauses, that is the clause and clause B, clause A and clause B provisions are not applicable, in that case time of supply shall be determined on the date which the recipient shows the receipt of services in his books of account. Okay. So in this regard, we shall remember certain points. The first point is same as that we discussed in case of TOS of goods. What is that? If the supplier of taxable service receives an amount up to rupees 1000 in excess of invoice amount, so if the particular person or if the particular supplier receives an amount which is in excess of 1000 amount as compared to the invoice. So invoice has got a particular amount and he received a particular amount which is in 1000 rupees excess of that amount in the invoice. At that time, at that point of time, the time of supply in case of that extra amount will be the date of issue of invoice, and that too it is at the option of the supplier. The supplier should decide that. Okay. So it will be the date of issue of invoice at the option of the supplier. The second point to be remembered is regarding the date of receipt of payment. Okay, that was one of the provision in the earlier slide we discussed. So the date of receipt of payment shall be the date when the payment is entered in the supplier's books of account, or the date when the payment is credited in his bank account, whichever is earlier. Okay, so whichever date is earlier, that date will be considered as the date of receipt of payment. Then, the very important point which should be considered here is the invoice must be issued either before the provision of service. That means provision means supply. Okay, so either before the supply of service or within 30 days from the date of supply of service. So, I am a supplier. I supplied a particular service today, that is on 29th of July. So the invoice should be issued within 30 days from this supply of service. That is, from today, within 30 days, the invoice should be supplied. I mean, the invoice should be issued. Okay. So this is a very important point that should be considered when we determine the time of supply of service. So I hope this basic rule or general rule regarding time of supply is clear to you. Okay. So let's move to an example. Mehak selects a banquet hall to organize a team event. Following are the particulars regarding the same. So 15th October, the hall was selected and an advance money of 25,000 was deposited. However, the total booking amount is rupees 1 lakh. On 30th November, the corporate event took place in the hall, and on 14th December, an invoice for the balance amount, that is 25,000, was already paid in the form of advance money. The balance amount is 75,000. So for that balance amount, for that 75,000, an invoice was issued. And this amount is after adjusting the advance money. Okay. So 31st December is the balance payment received. So in this case, how will we determine the time of supply of service? So as per our provisions, the first provision is, what is the first provision? The first provision is regarding date of issue of invoice by the supplier or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. So before this, the thing that we should consider is whether the invoice is issued within the period prescribed. So that is within 30 days of issue of invoice. Okay, within 30 days from the date of supply of service. The service was supplied on 30th November. That is, the corporate event took place on 30th November. So 30 days from this 30th November, what is the date of issue of invoice? Invoice was issued on 14th December. So this 14th December lies within 30 days from 30th November. Okay. So the prescribed limit is already known to us, or the invoice is issued within the prescribed time limit of 30 days. So in that case, what will be the provision? The provision will be date of issue of invoice or date of receipt of payment. So what is the date of issue of invoice in this case? That is 14th December. Okay. Then what is the date of receipt of payment? It can be determined in two ways. What are the two ways? It shall be on the date the payment is entered in the supplier's books of account, or the date when the payment is credited in his bank account. So in this case, the balance payment was received. Only that particular point is given to us. Okay. The balance payment was received on 31st December. Other conditions are not specified, not explained, or not given specifically. So date of receipt of payment shall be considered as on 31st December, whichever is earlier. So whichever is earlier, so time of supply is 14th December. Okay. So I hope this concept is clear for you. And now we will have a discussion on the time of supply of services under RCM, that is reverse charge mechanism. So I hope you remember what is the TOS in case of goods under RCM and what is the concept of RCM. So in this case, the TOS or time of supply shall be determined as follows. earliest of the following dates. The first provision, clause A says date of payment as entered in the books of account of the recipient or the date on which payment is made debited in his bank account. Okay. So date of payment as entered in the books of account of the recipient. Please take a note. It is in the books of recipient or the date on which payment is debited from his bank account. So after particular purchase of a particular service or consuming a particular service, the recipient should pay from his hand, so the amount will be debited from him. Okay, so either of these dates shall be considered. Then second one is date immediately following 60 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. So earlier of these conditions or earlier of these provisions will be considered as the time of supply of service in case of reverse charge mechanism. Okay, so I hope this is clear for you. So take a note of this. If for any reason the above dates cannot be determined, then in that situation, time of supply will be the date of recording the supply in the books of the recipient. So whenever the recipient records the particular supply in his books, that date will be considered as TOS if clause A and B does not exist. Okay, or the dates cannot be determined. So let's see an example here. Kapoor and Company is an unregistered supplier that offers accounting services to Sharma Limited. So here the supplier is unregistered. So it is understood that this is the case of reverse charge mechanism. And invoice was issued on September 7, 2018. And payment was delayed and hence it was made on, or the payment was made on December 16, 2018. Then the payment was made through check and the same was recorded in the books of accounts of the recipient. So how to determine the TOS in this case? So what are the provisions? Date of payment as entered in the books of account of the recipient. So here it is clearly pointed out that the payment was made through a check and the same was recorded in the books of accounts of the recipient. Okay, but the recorded date is not given here. So what is the second one? The date on which payment is made or payment is debited in his bank account. So is the date given? Then what is clause B? Date immediately following 60 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. Okay, so according to this question, the date of payment is considered to be 16th December. So the payment was done on 16th December. And second one or point B, clause B is 60 days. The date immediately after 60 days of issue of invoice. That means the 61st day. What will be the 61st day? It will be 6th November. That means the invoice was issued on 7th of September. So 24 days in September and 31 days in October and 7 days in November. Okay. So 6 days in November. So the 61st day. The day after 60th day, that is the 61st day, 6th November, will be considered as 60 days from the date of issue of invoice. So whichever is earlier will be considered as the time of supply. That is 16th December 2018. Sorry, not 16th December. It is 6th November 2018. Okay, sorry for the mistake. It is 6th November 2018 will be considered as the time of supply, whichever is earlier. So November is earlier. 6th November will be the time of supply of service. Okay. So we had a very brief discussion on the important provisions regarding time of supply of service. So in case of time of supply of goods with regards to the vouchers supplied, so that provision is same as in the case of service. So in case of voucher supplied, TOS for goods and services are similar. The determination are similar. So go through the video again, go through the examples, try to work out the examples by yourself and go through the videos and understand the concept. Thank you.